Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Golden Astrologer Podcast. This is Deb McBride, and I am recording this on Sunday, the 19th of July, in the year 2026, in beautiful Escazú, Costa Rica. So, I thank you for joining me again this week as we enter another powerful week in our astrological pursuits. But first, I want to talk about Mercury because this has been a very interesting Mercury retrograde, and I feel like it's been a really dynamic, active experience. There's been lots of little weirdo things that have happened, as is typical of Mercury retrograde. But it's been interesting, especially in this last week, I have found, because I learned all sorts of things that I did not know, and things that both personal and global, I have found things that are really, truly this interesting revelation of information. Okay. So, for example, and I'm saying this because Mercury's going direct this week. So it's an interesting thing. And I think that this dynamic has happened since Mercury and the Sun met halfway through the retrograde when we talked about this a number of days ago. And now what's happened is since then, all this information's come forward. There's been a lot of irritating things. Mercury retrograde often brings that. For myself, there's been opportunities to go deeper in my life and learn things about myself, and it's been really powerful. But I attribute that to this other arrangement that we have going on, which I will talk about shortly. So, what's interesting as far as Mercury retrograde is I learned a couple things this week. First of all, I learned that this whole Barbeau's basket that people are talking about in the astrology of this cradle, like I said, it's a cradle of planets, the 4 planets that are in this dynamic right now. Like I said, we're going to talk about this. But what's interesting is I did some research. I started to look into this, and I read about Andre Barbeau, who this is attributed to. And guess what? He never called this his basket. He never even referenced this planetary arrangement. He was talking about the Saturn-Neptune of February 20th that we had. Now, he was an expert in mundane astrology, which is the study of the outer planets and their cycles of consciousness and humanity. And so he passed away in 2019. He was born, I think, in the 1930s. He was a very well-known astrologer and wrote many articles, but many of them were in French. He did participate with other astrological organizations and lectures and things like that. And you can look up his biography on Astrodienst. But he did not discuss this arrangement, this cradle, this basket, and name it his basket. He talked about Saturn and Neptune being a beautiful flowering and opening and blossoming for humanity. And he felt that this Saturn-Neptune was the most beautiful aspect of the 21st century because he had this cyclic index that he used to map astrological patterns decades ahead of time. And he was able to predict COVID, although I have to find the actual prediction of that and the details of that, though I do believe Astrodienst, and I would want to see a little more about that. I didn't get that far because I was more concerned about right now rather than 6 years ago. But he didn't talk about right now. He talked about that Saturn-Neptune being this beautiful blossoming. Now, considering what we've seen happen in the world since that Saturn-Neptune happened and on and about the time Saturn and Neptune got together, I want to see more beautiful things because it's pretty ugly. I mean, there was an awful war started, and that's part of the Saturn Neptune experience. He also was able to predict the something happening with the Soviet Union based on the aspects of the 1950s when Saturn and Neptune were together, and then the aspects of 1989. He predicted, something was going to happen with the Soviet Union, that there was going to be a reorganization or a reconfiguration of what was going on in Russia. And that indeed was the case. That was the beginning of the end of communism there. So, and we've talked about that being under the Saturn Neptune, but I think that prediction genuinely comes from him. But he did not talk about this thing and call it a basket and name it his basket. And everyone's saying, oh, yeah, he talked about it. And they're all calling it this. And I found out that he didn't do that at all. And so everyone's attributing it to him. And there seems to be an attribute to him for this basket on the internet. The internet attributed it to him. Somewhere, somebody started that thread and everybody kind of took it and ran. So that was one piece of Mercury retrograding having the truth come out. And that was very interesting. The other thing I learned, which has nothing to do with astrology, is that I was looking at, it rolled across my Instagram, this profile of a woman who is a chocolate historian. And her profile is Projet_Chocolat. And she's not French, she lives in the US. I think she might be of an indigenous Central America, Latin America community origin, like her family's from that. But don't quote me on that. But she is a chocolate historian, and she said that there's no such thing as ceremonial cacao. There is no such thing as a cacao ceremony, and cacao was served as a beverage at all ceremonies in indigenous cultures. And so this is actually something really distinctive and important. And she's trying to set the record straight. And I reposted on my stories her posts about this the other day when I saw this. I think it's fascinating. But this is another example of the truth coming out from Mercury retrograde. And she was saying, call it what it is. If you want to have a ceremony, but don't repackage it and sell it back to us as some sort of capitalistic thing, like, oh yeah, you need to be certified to do this cacao ceremony thing. No, you don't. There's no cacao ceremony certification. It doesn't exist. So I think this is really, some of it's a little hilarious, although people were getting hot under the collar in the comments on her post. But I didn't want to start anything with Barbeau's basket or anything about that. You're not correct. I have Mercury in Capricorn on the south node, so I can be really pedantic. But so all of this stuff kind of appeals to me, like the direct, correct information, where it's coming from. And this chocolate historian was saying that, just be clear and transparent if you're making chocolate, you're producing chocolate, about where the beans come from and what percentage cacao is in the chocolate. If it's 100%, if it's 75%, etc. And just be very clear about that. But, it was really, really interesting. And yeah, I just gave you the handle, Project Chocolat, and you can go look at it yourself. But this was one thing that I heard globally. Obviously, the astrology one applies more to me in this experience. And the other thing I found out personally, last night I was texting with my sister, and she's telling me there's thunderstorms in New Jersey and all, and she doesn't like them, and the sky was getting really dark and all. And I said, yeah, she said, and she was saying how my mother, who passed away in 2008, she said that my mother used to hide in the closet when it came time for thunderstorms. And I just sat there looking at the text on my phone, and I said, I don't remember this. When was this? And she said, oh, I kept her company sometimes. She did that. Well, I don't remember that. I remember my mother closing the windows and shutting off the air conditioner and being very careful, maybe turning some of the lights off when there was a lightning storm. But she didn't hide in the closet. Maybe because I was there as a little kid. Maybe because we had the TV on. Sometimes she shut the TV off if we had a storm. But she would get really worried and very, very concerned about these storms. And then my sister then told me something else that I'd never knew, and that our grandmother, my mother's mother, Catarina Tarzia, my grandmother, was sitting at an open window during a thunderstorm, during a lightning storm, and she was sewing with a needle and thread. And the lightning came in and struck the needle, and she got struck by lightning through the needle she was sewing with. And I was like, what? I didn't know this. When did Well, it obviously happened in the early 1950s, 40s, 30, whenever, when my mother was much younger. My grandmother died in 1954, 10 years before I was born. So I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I'm hearing all these stories. And it's interesting because Mercury's retrograde in the sign of Cancer, right? So that's family stories, family legends. And I think this is what made my mother afraid of lightning storms, that her mother got struck by lightning by sewing by the window. And I said, well, what happened to her? Did she go to the hospital? And my sister said, no, there was not a big deal, but, whatever, maybe there was just some charge that hit the needle. So I don't know how struck she was, but obviously this is, later on information from more than half a century ago. So very interesting that these things came forward while Mercury was retrograde. Now, Mercury goes direct on Thursday, the 23rd at 6:58 p.m. Eastern Time. So close to 7 o'clock. So finally we are in the last days of Mercury retrograde. And I think it's been kind of a whopper, right? So this has been irritating. It's been frustrating. It's been complicated. And it's a very it's a usual thing. Sometimes Mercury retrograde isn't a bad deal, but it is important, I think, to spend time with yourself, to go within and do some soul searching exercises, things, meditations, breath work, whatever it is you do. I think you should always do that, but it's particularly important during Mercury retrograde. So you can uncover some things, and it's been very fruitful for me. And moving right along here into this little basket cradle arrangement with the planets that have been in this arrangement, the outer planets and Jupiter, I'm finding this to be very powerful and very helpful. And if you are willing to do the work to go along with this, I think that you will find that these planets are helping us evolve our consciousness and open to new things. Remember what I said last week, Jupiter is in Leo. It wants an open heart. It's asking us to open our hearts to what wonderful divine consciousness things can arrive on our doorstep if we open our heart and open our eyes and open our mind for this, but mostly coming from our heart. So I found this particularly powerful and interesting, and I was very happy that I've been, doing some exercises, doing breath work, doing things that have been stirring the pot and opening things and clearing, helping me release and clear stuff. So very, very fruitful for me. But I have the sun at 4 degrees Aquarius, and Pluto is on my sun. And, that's part of it. I'm really getting a big dynamic here astrologically, personally. Now, speaking of Pluto, tomorrow we are in this dynamic with the outer planets, and we are completely opening more doors in these next few days and this week. So this isn't going away. Okay, Jupiter is triggering everything. I feel like Jupiter is kind of the ringleader here because it's the fastest planet in this arrangement, and the others will stay connected to each other in and out of these trines and sextiles with each other. And Jupiter is sort of lighting the match in a fire sign, and it's, in this opposition to Pluto, which is going to be exact tomorrow. Okay, and that exact aspect is Jupiter opposite Pluto, Jupiter in Leo opposite Pluto in Aquarius at 10:45 a.m. Eastern Time. And all these things tend to happen in the morning these next couple days in our region of the world, my region of the world. It's, 10:45 a.m. That's going to be 8:45 a.m. for me. But Jupiter and Pluto are really at this 4 degrees of each sign, and they are in this opposition. Now, what does that do? I think this is the ringleader. I think this is the one that's really dynamically opening the door, because it's the only stressful aspect or challenging aspect in this whole arrangement of this basket cradle. Okay? And, astrologers use the terms basket and cradle for everybody's astrological charts if it's present in there. It doesn't need to be this particular special time. Although if you have a baby during this time, wow, they've got quite an astrological chart, and I'd like to see what they become in their life and who they are. But, you can have Mercury, Moon, nodes, whatever, Jupiter, Saturn, in some sort of basket configuration in your astrological chart, because that's the nature of astrology. We have lots of shapes. We call them locomotives, baskets, splay. That means they're like all over the whole chart. But this is obviously affecting everyone, and there's 4 planets involved, and you've got them in 4 different houses in your horoscope, in your astrological chart. Now, if you are finding that some powerful stuff is happening, you want to have a look at your astrological chart, because these planets are sitting in certain sectors that are in your life and are evolving those areas of your life. So this is particularly powerful, and I would recommend that you do get your astrological chart read. And you can, of course, come to me if you'd like to do that, thegoldenastrologer.com, click book online, and we'll set up a session. But we'll discuss where everything is happening for you and how these planets are evolving those areas of your chart. Now, Jupiter is not going to stay in this arrangement. Jupiter's faster. It's going to move forward. It's going to move out of this dynamic and slowly, over the next days and weeks, but eventually get out of this and move on through Leo and not come back to these things. It's not like it's Neptune that's moving in and out, that's going to move 4 degrees. It's stationed retrograde at 4 degrees, and it's going to come back again to 4 degrees, after it goes retrograde and then stations direct, etc., etc. It's not that these other planets are all coming back and forth to 4 degrees. Jupiter is not. So this is why I'm calling it the ringleader. It's the one that's setting things on fire and provoking Pluto and provoking us to take initiative, do some work, do some decision making, intention setting, taking of action during this time. Like, I had moments this week where I said, in the past week, I'm not letting that happen ever again. And I'm making decisions and firm intentions about what I want and don't want in my life. That's a really good use of this energy. Everyone needs to sit down with themselves and make that decision. And honestly, Jupiter's the one that opens things up, expands things, and opens the door to the next level of consciousness in this whole arrangement. Okay, it helps us see further on, okay, and where we want to be with this. So what is your intention? What do you want your life to look like? I feel things changing. I feel consciousness shifting. And I was talking with a friend yesterday. I gave her a card reading, and we were talking, and I said, she had a bad dream. She was very concerned about it. She thought something was really going on in her life behind her back. And I said, you know what? This is a clearing out of the past. And I think that this is a real strong dynamic for all of us. It was a clearing out of the past for her. I've had a clearing out of the past for me. I'm feeling better and more peaceful with the past and gaining wisdom from the past. And I think it's time for all of us to shift gears, because all these planets are in new signs and they're talking to each other. So this is this beautiful arrangement and this beautiful dynamic between these planets. And it's asking us to move forward with great depth and intention and speed. Jupiter is speeding things up. Jupiter likes to bring us to a new place because it's opening the doors for us to go walk through those doors, right? So something really profound is going on, and it's so important for us to really take advantage of this energy. The other planets, Pluto and Neptune and Uranus, they're all in this very lovely, smooth configuration. They're all talking to each other with smooth aspects of sextile and trine. Jupiter is the one that's pressing on Pluto, saying, transform, open the door, put the light on in the closet. And when did I say that? If you've been listening to me for a number of years, you'll remember that during COVID, during 2020, Jupiter and Pluto conjunct 3 times, which is highly unusual. Usually they get together in the same place at the same time and Jupiter moves on and we're done. This was not. Jupiter went backwards, Jupiter conjunct Pluto, Jupiter conjunct Pluto, came back and conjunct Pluto again, and then a third time conjunct Pluto. And then, Saturn came back in and stuff, and all the three of them were together. So Jupiter and Pluto were conjunct. They were conjunct in 2020, and the first conjunction was April of 2020. Do you remember that? I think it was April 5th or so of 2020. And there was a big meditation throughout the world. There was a global meditation for Jupiter and Pluto conjunction, which is very powerful. But it played into the dynamics of, COVID and what was going on at that time. And Jupiter only expands the transformation. And I kept telling people to go find your deep creativity and turn the light on in the closet and find what's in your life that's not being used or being accessed until now. Like people found all sorts of new skills for themselves during that time when they were working from home or isolating at home. They discovered all sorts of other qualities of their lives and talents and skills and abilities and creativity that they had. This is the first opposition to Jupiter and Pluto from back then. So they're not going to do this again. See, this is not going to be one of those cases where Jupiter and Pluto do the dance 3 times. They're doing it tomorrow at 10:45 a.m. Eastern Time, and then they're not coming back together again. Jupiter is going to move on. It doesn't mean Jupiter, Tuesday, it's over. No, it means that Jupiter is building up to this. It's a crescendo. It's the peak at 10:45 a.m. tomorrow. And then Jupiter will start to wane. But you're still going to have this information coming forward all week, the next couple of weeks, because Jupiter and Pluto are still going to be opposite one another, even if they're like 3, 4, 5 degrees apart for a little while now. Okay? So it's just that the exactitude of it happens tomorrow, in addition to Jupiter trining Neptune. So Jupiter's going to trine Neptune at 3:23 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow morning. Then it will do that dance with Pluto 10:45 a.m. And then on Tuesday, Jupiter will sextile Uranus at 7:11 a.m. These are all Eastern Time. Wow. How about that? And the moon is in Libra. And the moon has touched all of these planets as of today. It made the trine to Pluto, the opposition to Neptune, and the trine to Uranus. So the moon is making a grand trine in the sky with Uranus and Pluto. And it is doing this dance with the 3 planets, all of them, and then, the opposition to Neptune and Aries. And then it's going to move on. And then the moon is going to go into Scorpio on Tuesday at 9:35 a.m. Eastern Time. And then that Scorpio moon is going to get involved in this arrangement as well. Although it's going to square Pluto on Tuesday at 6:11 p.m. It's going to make the inconjunct to Neptune at 6:05 p.m. and the inconjunct to Uranus at 6:39 p.m. So this is all in the dynamic of, the yod. Again, we've got the yod. We've got, this moon in Scorpio, and it's going to square Jupiter. It's making a T-square on Tuesday with Jupiter and Pluto, who are opposite each other. And it's making the yod because it's an inconjunct to Neptune and to Uranus, and they are in sextile to one another. So we have another Y configuration in the sky. Again, big dynamics, big energies, big transformational energies asking us to set intention. What do you not want in your life anymore? What do you want to call in? What are you setting your attention towards? What do you need? What do you want? What do you want? And what is it that you are trying to achieve? Big strides forward can be made right now. It is also, this is a little bit intense. I mean, of course, I've got Pluto on my sun, so I'm tossing and turning with bits of anxiety. Like I'll wake up and I feel like this tremble in my being, and I'm feeling like, and I'll say to myself, this is anxiety, and I roll over and go back to sleep. But thankfully it's that instead of, this is anxiety, and I'm like looking at the dawn and crying my eyes out. Thankfully, I'm patient and understanding, and I have astrology, and as I always say, how do people get along without astrology? I don't know what people born my birthday walking around with 4 degrees Aquarius sun, like what are they doing right now if they don't have astrology? I don't know. Thankfully, the other outer planets are supporting me. I feel supported by Jupiter, but this is intense. This is intense, guys. This is really something we want to pay attention to, work with, and use for our benefit of our life. This is also the last few days of the sun in the sign of Cancer. So Cancer season is ending, and the sun is entering Leo at 3:13 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, the 22nd. So this is something really, another chapter in all of this. The sun is in Leo. So what's it going to do eventually? Well, it's going to get involved with Jupiter and Pluto. Of course it is. And next Sunday, the 26th, the sun will oppose Pluto. But it's very late, 11:55 p.m. Pacific time, and so that means it's the 27th of July, the following day, and the sun will get into all of these relationships. And so next week, and we'll talk about this on next week's podcast, how the sun gets involved, because it's now going to be in early Leo, and it's going to be approaching the opposition to Pluto, and it's going to conjunct Jupiter, and it's going to do the whole dance with the outer planets, but not just yet, okay? That's next weekend and beginning of next week. This week we've got Jupiter with Neptune, Jupiter with Pluto, and then Jupiter with Uranus between Monday and Tuesday. So these are the days people have been talking about, the 21st of July for months, and here we are. We're already here, and I can't believe it's the 21st of July already. So Mercury goes direct on Thursday, and then Mercury and Venus are having a conversation on Friday, the 24th at 12:13 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, they are in sextile. That's another nice smooth aspect with Mercury in Cancer, Venus in Virgo. And so, it's a little more grounded with Venus and Virgo, and asking ourselves, well, where have I been? What have I been learning through all of this? What did I learn from Mercury retrograde? And what am I learning from this cradle in the sky, right? And then Neptune and Pluto are going to make their sextile, their exact sextile, and that's going to be at 1:49 a.m. Eastern Time, Saturday the 25th. If you're in the Pacific time zone, it's going to be 10:49 p.m. Friday night, the 24th. But it's happening. It is happening. That's the exactitude. That's the exact aspect. It's happening right now, all of it. So this is all very powerful, all very powerful. And then we have our friend Saturn going retrograde next Sunday, the 26th. And that is one more thing that we have to consider right now with Saturn. Saturn will go retrograde at 3:56 p.m. on Sunday, the 26th. That is Eastern Time. And Saturn is in Aries. Saturn is not part of this basket configuration, this cradle. It's at 14 degrees of Aries, so it's already halfway through the sign. And this is where it's going retrograde, and it'll go back a distance, but it's not going so far back that it's going to trigger all these guys again, right? So it's got its own dynamic and its own things going on. Meantime, so much is happening this week. So much is happening this week. We've got this very powerful dynamic of these outer planets talking to one another, the sun changing signs and entering the sign that Jupiter's in, and getting close to Jupiter, getting close to opposition with Pluto. And we've got a lot of very powerful shifts and changes this week, with Mercury going direct and Saturn going retrograde. And so hang on to your hat, Astro Darlings. It's really something that we need to pay attention to. We have to pay attention to this. I feel it's very positive. I feel it's very exciting. I feel we have to take advantage of it, because this could slip through our hands and not even make a dent if we don't really stay aware of it, okay? And our awareness, our conscious awareness, is very important right now during this time with these planets arranging themselves like this. So I really hope that you are setting your intention, that you are spending time with yourself, that you are making up your mind about things. And Jupiter, I really believe that when there's this opposition like this, Jupiter is provoking us with the opposition to Pluto to say, hey, this is unacceptable. I don't want this anymore. I've been hanging out like this since COVID, right? Maybe something hasn't changed in 6 years since that conjunction 3 times. That was a very powerful year astrologically, right? So now we're at the opposition. It's time to say, where have I been? What have I done? What have I been doing? And where do I want to go next? And Jupiter takes 12 years to go around the zodiac. And it's at the midpoint of that. It's done that conjunction to Pluto 3 times back in 2020, and now here we are with the opposition tomorrow. What does that mean for us? Where have we been? What are we doing? Have we really expanded our world and our transformation? And where else can we put the light on in the closet? Just because it's an opposition doesn't mean we're not putting the light on in the closet. We're putting the light on in the closet, and maybe we're a little more reluctant, or we're being pressed to put the light on in the closet, or it's been 6 years of this cycle and enough is enough. I don't want this anymore. I want something new. And believe me, there's something in your life that's telling you, I'm done with this and I'm moving forward. Believe me, there's something happening there. So look for it, or maybe you know what it is and it's very obvious. For me, it was obvious. I did a little digging. It is Pluto after all. It's the underworld. There's the planet of the underworld asking us to do a little digging, and Jupiter is opening the door to the underworld to help us put the light on in the closet, right? So maybe it's very obvious for you, and all you need to do is just sort of sit with yourself and open that door and allow the door to open, okay? This is something's banging at the door to come through. Allow it to come up, because this release that we're each going to have as a result of this release, this light that is coming, we have to let the light in. And Jupiter is saying, please let the light in, okay? So I really hope each of you are taking advantage of this time. I would invite you to have a session with me, because it's a powerful, powerful time to have a session. I would invite you to do some more deep stuff, like you can do Reiki with me also. All of this is available on my website, thegoldenastrologer.com. Just click book online and you can set up a session with me. I also do expansion mentoring if you're interested in working with me for longer term. These planets are going to be with us for a little while. Neptune, Uranus, Pluto are going to be in this dance for a while. But right now we're opening the door to something very profound. So I feel like Jupiter's lighting the match, and we're going to see this for a while. Okay, so you can work with me 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. We don't have to just stop after one astrology session. I invite you to follow me on Instagram, The Golden Astrologer. I did post a video about this the other day. I'll be posting more about this in these coming days. So important to be paying attention to this right now, and stay tuned, because there's going to be lots of new things coming forward. We're not finished. We're not finished. The sun is going to get involved. Neptune and Pluto are going to do their sextile. Saturn's going to go retrograde. What will that reveal? So, moving forward day by day in this dynamic, fascinating. Keep a journal. Keep yourself conscious and aware, and have a beautiful, beautiful week with Jupiter and Pluto. Make a wish, it's Jupiter, and we'll be talking very soon about more of these dynamics. I thank you so much for listening, and have an exceptionally beautiful week ahead. Thank you for listening. Gratitude to all.